Hi, Chris and Cameron here with IPD, and as you can see, we got a bunch of brake components laid out in front of us. What we'd like to talk to you about today is replacement brakes, upgraded brakes, pads, and some brake lines. Now we're going to talk a little bit about performance, but performance doesn't always mean upgrading your brake rotors or going to a larger caliper. It talks about how it suits your driving and your lifestyle of what you need the brakes to actually do for your vehicle.
So on that note, let's talk about pads first. And as Chris mentioned, performance doesn't always mean what's going to be the best stopping power, period, all the time in every condition if you're going 100 miles an hour. It means what's going to perform right for you. So two basic examples when we're talking about pads are going to be this. This is Volvo OEM pad, and this is an aftermarket Acubona ceramic pad. On pads, you're kind of looking at a scale of soft to hard and kind of less dense to more dense when you're talking about performance. So the point of the OEM original ones is kind of daily driving, regular use under most conditions, and that means it's going to be real soft. It's going to stay very quiet, but it's also going to dust a lot. So if importance for you is keeping them quiet and very consistent and just kind of always working pretty good, OEM's a good option. Now if you like to push it a little bit harder, or if you live somewhere where you're in the mountains a lot, or you get your brakes hot from a lot of stop and go, that's a good time to consider going with something like an Acubona ceramic. It's going to be more dense, so it's going to have less propensity to have some fading on it, which means when you get that hot pad and the brakes kind of feel like you're losing power, this is going to help you with that. The other side of it though is that you may get a little bit of squeal, especially when it's cold out and when the pads are cold in the morning because of the dense material, and they're going to eat up your rotors a little bit more. I don't consider that to be a big deal on most modern cars because it's recommended to replace the rotors anyway. So again, it's about what performs better for you. Something more dense where you're getting the brakes real hot, or something that's just going to stay nice and quiet all the time as long as you're not driving the car very hard.
The number one call and email that we get pertaining to brakes is brake squeal. Nothing's more embarrassing than pulling up to a stoplight and the heavy screeching that's affecting other drivers around you. So we have a few tips that's going to help combat some brake squeal.
One of the main things that you're going to find with brake squeal is going to be caused by a high frequency vibration or an uneven pad contact surface. And when I talk about that, about the pad contact surface, I'll use this to illustrate. We're talking about the swept area on the rotor, which is all this area that the pad sweeps across. Now if you imagine that you're driving and you're going 80 miles an hour and you're slowing down, there's going to be a lot of contact, a lot of friction going on here. And if you've got an uneven surface, if you've got grooves and rotors, or if you've got the pad coming in unevenly because maybe the pistons are a little bit stuck in the calipers or whatever, all those things are only going to make it worse. And what that means is you get that vibration, it all shakes around like that, and that turns into squeal, especially if you're running a denser pad like a ceramic pad or a semi-metallic pad. Now the way to combat that is going to be to make sure that every time you replace your pads, that you inspect your rotors, resurface if necessary, or better yet, replace them at the same time so that you can bed the new pads into the new rotors. Now along with that, you want to make sure that everything is clean. And that means not only the pistons where they contact the back of the pads here so it can move evenly, but also all the pad retaining hardware. Every type of caliper that any Volvo uses that has disc brakes is going to have some pieces, components that go along with that. There's pins, little springs, things like that. Those get rusted, those get stuck, things don't move smoothly, that leads to vibration, that leads to squeal. So what you want to make sure you do is inspect all that, grease it as necessary, replace as necessary. If you have questions on any of this stuff, we carry all the parts. Check out our website, give us a call, we can always answer all these questions.
Cameron spoke about the way the pads mate to the rotors. Now as you can see, we have rotors laid out here. We have different variations of rotors that you might want to look at depending on your driving style. We have stock replacement rotors, and then we also got a couple upgrades, which mean cross-drilled or grooved. You might hear that term quite a bit on the website or in our mailers. Grooved rotors and cross-drilled rotors means that the fronts have got some sort of pattern or drill pattern through them to help disperse heat when braking. The pad material mates up with the face of these rotors and it helps get rid of that heat between the pad and the rotor, keeping it a little bit cooler on the swept area. Now I'm going to let Cameron talk a little bit about the different variations that we have on the website pertaining to sizes.
Now as Chris talked about, we've got a few options, either a standard face rotor like this, cross-drilled, slotted, etc. Now whatever you chose for your style, for your driving, for your type of performance, there's still a few considerations to take in. Sometimes on different models you might have the same even model year that can have two different options on sizings. So for that, we've got all the information on the website about measurements you might need to take, so give us a call or check the website and we can give you any info about what needs to be measured, if it needs to be measured, etc. to ensure that you get the correct fitment the first time.
As Cameron mentioned about sizes and checking the size of your rotors, we have a lot of performance rotors that are for the stock size of your vehicle. So you can, in theory, upgrade your rotor package and your brake package with the factory sized rotors that are on your car now. It's basically a direct bolt-on. But for those weekend autocrossers or people that take their Volvo to the track, or those people that want to push their car to the edge, we do have some big brake kits that fit your model. I urge you to check out the website and check applications for your Volvo.
Now, another final thing we're going to talk about is kind of an icing on the cake for performance brakes, and that pertains to upgrading your brake lines. Now, your car, every Volvo model with disc brakes, is going to have two styles of brake lines. You've got your rigid lines, which are the copper lines or steel lines that run under the car, and then at the points where you have suspension movement, you need to have flexible lines. Now, from the factory, they are rubber lines. There's a couple problems with that. One is they just get old over time, they crumble, they degrade. Another is that because of the material, the tolerances have to be a little bit higher, so the passages on the inside are a little bit larger diameter. And that means more pedal travel to get the same amount of fluid movement to be able to actuate the pistons onto the calipers. Now, when you're talking about a nice upgrade, these are the stainless lines that replace those rubber flexible lines. And you have two distinct advantages on these versus the rubber ones. One is they don't decay. They'll pretty much last you forever unless something weird happens to them, if you get an accident, something like that. The other big advantage of these is that they have a much tighter tolerance. The channels on the inside are a significantly smaller diameter. So what that means is in a hydraulic system, it takes less effort on the pedal to move more fluid. So when you get that, that means a more precise feel, a more solid feel, no flex, all that. Much tighter feel on the pedal, much more confident feeling in the brakes, period. Combine that with a lot of what we're going on here, slotted rotors, drilled rotors, performance pads, or if you just want it to perform right, these plus a OEM rotor and an OEM pad is going to get your brakes either right back to new or better than new, depending upon what your definition of new is and what your definition of performance is. If you have any questions on any of this stuff, as we've always mentioned, check out our website, look at our application. We've got lots of great tech tips on there, and we have a full customer service staff to answer your call and answer any questions you have, so give us a call.